ChatGPT said, "You ever have one of those days where you wake up to birdsong, coffee in hand, thinking it's going to be a good one? Then a single sheet of paper ruins everything?" That was me, standing on my porch with a yellow slip flapping in the breeze like it was laughing at me. A violation notice from the Westfield Ridge HOA, threatening fines, legal action, even demolition if I didn't tear down unauthorized structures within 72 hours. No signature from a city inspector, just the iron hand of suburbia, wrapped in red tape and passive-aggressive letterhead. Now look, this ranch? It's not just dirt and fence posts. It's 4 generations deep. My granddad built it when he came back from the war. My old man put up the red barn the year I turned 6. And last spring, I added a greenhouse and a chicken coop to teach kids where food comes from. Not some act of rebellion, just tradition carried forward. But none of that mattered to the HOA. They'd drawn a line in the sand, thinking they were protecting property values. Thing is, I hadn't crossed it. They had. See, what Diane Langford and her clipboard brigade didn't realize was that this land, specifically the patch under their pristine tennis courts and fancy little gym, was mine. Technically, legally, inherited and documented. An old lease my great-granddad signed in the 1920s had just expired. For decades, they'd paid a symbolic $1 a year to use it. That lease? Dead and gone. With a little digging, some dusty county files, and a call to my lawyer, Camila, sharp as a tack and twice as mean when provoked, we rewrote the script. Filed a new lease, tripled the rent, delivered it to Diane with a smile. She looked like someone had just told her Pilates was canceled for life. Phone in one hand, trembling, voice climbing like a kettle about to blow. She threatened everything from lawsuits to smear campaigns. But it was too late. The rules she worshipped had finally turned on her. Let me back up for a sec. My name's Travis Carter. I'm 41, run a 12-acre ranch on the edge of Westfield Ridge in Pinewood County, Colorado. Chickens, bees, a couple of ponies. I teach riding on weekends. It ain't fancy, but it's home. Life was good until Diane moved in. She and her husband Howard, quiet guy, always 2 steps behind her like a ghost, started poking around. First, it was my rooster, Billy, crowing at dawn. Then my fence. Then my chickens. She stood on my land, telling me it wasn't up to HOA standards. I told her, plain as sunrise, "I'm not part of your HOA." You'd think I'd insulted her ancestors. Things went cold after that. Then came the fundraiser, a simple day for the neighborhood kids. Pony rides, lemonade, barbecue. Sarah Morgan, a single mom from the HOA side, brought her little girl Abby, who was battling leukemia. Abby barely spoke until she saw the horses. We got her up on Daisy, the gentlest mare on the ranch. Her smile lit up the place like a Christmas tree. Sarah cried, and just over her shoulder, Diane, fuming, asking for permits. I offered her lemonade. She declined, twice. 3 days later, the violation notice hit my fence. That's when I knew. This wasn't about rules, it was about control. Noise complaints followed. Then zoning letters, anonymous tips about dangerous livestock, my bees, even my compost bin. But the moment they tried to force me to demolish my own structures, that was their mistake. Camila and I moved fast. Old leases, new filings, everything airtight. The fallout was immediate. Diane tried to rally her board, but cracks formed. Phil Jacobs stopped waving during dog walks. Jessica Crane pulled her son away from feeding my goats like I was contagious. But not everyone bought the HOA drama. Sarah and Abby still came by. Sarah admitted Diane was threatening to cut her from the HOA kids' fund if she kept visiting the ranch. I told her what I tell every kid who shows up here. This place is for everybody. Period. Word spread. We held little evening get-togethers. Nothing wild. Just esmores and stories under the stars. But eyes were always watching from behind hedges. Then one afternoon, a guy in a Broncos jacket shows up, Ethan Wells, land assessor, hired by the HOA to re-examine property lines. He walked the fence with me, nodded slow, then leaned in. For what it's worth, you're in the clear. They're the ones trespassing. That was the first crack. He also mentioned whispers, Some board members were fed up, floating the idea of a recall vote against Diane. Next thing I know, a couple of her loyalists show up uninvited, shouting across my pasture. My ranch hand Luis told them to leave. One shoved him. Sheriff's deputies had to break it up. That's when I realized this wasn't just a land dispute. This was war. Then the city shows up, officials in suits, carrying a cease and desist order for community distress. Camila snorted when she saw it. Bluff and bluster. But they were serious. So I pushed back. Nailed a sign to their clubhouse gate. Lease expired. Trespassers will be prosecuted. The next morning, their doors were chained shut, orange notice stapled front and center. Diane threw a fit for the news cameras. The cops didn't even flinch. Just when I thought it was over, they hit me again. Someone tipped off the county about my barn. Unsafe for public events, they said. No lessons, no pony rides. Abby cried when I told her. Sarah brought me a loaf of fresh bread and just said, "You're not alone." That night, I heard kids joking about burning down the tennis court. I knew then we couldn't keep this quiet anymore. Camila went public. News outlets ran the story. We showed documents, videos of HOA members trespassing, testimonies from neighbors who saw through the lies. Diane panicked and sued me. Emotional distress, $500,000. I laughed, sat down for one interview, and said, "Thanks for reminding me what this land is really about. Not tradition, but community." The story exploded. Donations, letters, people showing up just to shake my hand. Then, boom, my tool shed went up in flames. Arson, gas can left behind, and a message scratched on the coupe. Next time, we won't miss. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat on my porch with a shotgun across my lap. Diane didn't light the match, but she sure as hell passed out the torches. 3 days later, we launched the recall. Flyers, door-to-door talks. Helen Douglas, the oldest resident, was the first to sign. "Just don't become her," she said. We got the votes. 76% wanted Diane out. The celebration lasted an hour. Then the county clerk called. New land claim. This time from Diane's cousin, Jonathan. Some dusty deed, probably fake, but enough to drag me back to court. What I didn't expect? The community showed up for me. Affidavits, testimonies. Phil Jacobs, the quiet one, handed over emails proving Diane lied, faked records, even forged city docs. Camila filed counterclaims. The DA stepped in. The court ruled in my favor again. Diane, exposed. Fined nearly $500,000. She left the courtroom sobbing. Months later, Carter Ranch, yeah, we renamed it, is now a public community park. The new HOA? Run by Helen, with Sarah as treasurer and Phil finally saying more than 5 words at a time. Abby leads pony rides every weekend. Billy the rooster's still crowing like he owns the dawn. And me? I walk the land with folks who used to cross the street to avoid me, and now ask for gardening tips. Funny thing about land. On paper, it's dirt. But once people start fighting for it together, it becomes something else that, now I ask you. What do you do when the rules get used to silence the very people they're supposed to protect? When power's just a curtain for fear and control? Yeah, I won. But was that justice, or just survival? You tell me.